The Darkness comic book centers on a man named Jackie Estacado, a wielder of an artifact called the Darkness, elemental force in the universe. Jackie is one of 13 artifacts that came together and created a new universe. In the old universe, Jenny, his childhood friend, was killed by his criminal lifestyle. He also had a child with a woman who calls herself Witchblade. The child was named Hope. In the new universe, however, Jackie is now married to Jenny and Hope is now their child. At the start of the comic, Jackie and Jenny are arguing due to Jackie having killed someone. Jenny tells Jackie that he has to get rid of the darkness. Jackie enlists the help of the Witch King, a fellow user of the darkness, and a man who had managed to get rid of the darkness. Jackie manages to rid himself of the darkness. However, this leads to Jackie creating a doppelganger, who begins to cause a gang war, take advantage of Jackie's marriage problems, and begins to infect Jackie's home and life. Can Jackie stop the darkness, or will it take away everything he holds dear? The way this book was presented to me was that it was supposed to be like this soft reboot. And what it was supposed to be was it was supposed to be at the aftermath of this event called the Artifacts. The Witchblade comic and the Darkness comic would basically restart into this like volume 1 series of books, which was meant to bring in new readers. I argue that this isn't exactly the case. The Darkness does require you to have read the previous books. Jackie Estacado is a man trying to overcome his own darkness and trying to utilize and Jackie basically has been trying to utilize the darkness and to try and control this uncontrollable force. And the way that I'm guessing these artifacts work in this universe is that the artifacts work. The artifacts are basically cannot be controlled. They can only be harnessed by these groups of individuals. For example, Jackie Estacado wields the darkness. The character called Witchblade, which I'm going to be reviewing very soon, controls the Witchblade. These artifacts, as I understand them, are basically forces in the universe that are basically like elemental forces of the universe. Yeah, and they're not meant to be controlled, but have to be used in order to bring balance to the world. In this comic, Jackie attempts to rid himself of that supernatural force. But in doing so, he creates a bigger problem for both himself and his family. He creates another demon and a doppelganger, and this doppelganger begins to infect his house and infect his life. And I really, really like the concept of how this affects, of how Jackie, because of the way Jackie has lived his life, I'm really interested to see how the darkness sort of infects the people around Jackie's life. The way I would explain this comic to people is the comic is a traditional mobster type story. But the main character is just slightly unsympathetic. I'm not able to particularly feel sorry that Jackie is going through such a hard time. Because Jackie, and the way I understand the darkness, is a villain. And he's not a very sympathetic villain. Jackie is a selfish being. And he's just not very sympathetic. I would say if you're not interested in comics that have nudity, or comics that have a lot of violence, and this comic is probably not for you. There are some scenes in this comic that feature sex, and there is a lot of violence, and a lot of scenes that are quite disturbing. But what I really liked is I did like elements to the artwork. The artwork for this film is very, very good. And although I didn't mind the nudity. The nudity wasn't a great problem because it suits what this comic is trying to present. But it's definitely not a book you should read anywhere near your parents or your girlfriend or your spouse. This book does something very, very interesting, and something that Batman and Son does quite a lot in that Grant Morrison did in one of his Batman stories. He did a written story, and these written stories, or actual writing, appears in after every single book. I kind of wish that stuff had been at the back of the book, because it broke up a lot of the book's flow. But what was written in these little these little notes were very, very interesting. All in all, guys, I would give this about a 4 out of 5. It is a very, very good book. I just think it's a very, very acquired taste. Definitely not one of the best books I've read. Yeah, so I'm Robin1 here, and I shall see you later for another comic book review. Bye.